The 21st of February, 1965, 3:05 p.m. The Audubon Ballroom was silent, except for the sound of gunpowder smoke drifting toward the ceiling. Malcolm X lay motionless on the stage. Blood pooled beneath his body, the five assassins smiled at each other. Norman Butler holstered his shotgun. Thomas Hagen pocketed his pistol. Mission accomplished. Malcolm X was dead. 400 people sat frozen in their seats, too shocked to move. Some were crying. Others were praying. A few were already planning to flee before the police arrived. Then Malcolm X opened his eyes. He placed his palms flat against the wooden stage, pushed himself up to his knees. Then to his feet. Blood dripped from his shirt, but he stood steady as a mountain. Malcolm adjusted his tie, straightened his jacket, looked directly at the five killers who just emptied their guns into him, and smiled. "Gentlemen," Malcolm said, his voice carrying to every corner of the silent ballroom. "Thank you for that demonstration now." He took one step forward. The assassins backed up instinctively. "It is my turn." What happened next would become the most legendary 20 minutes in civil rights history. But to understand how Malcolm X survived an assassination attempt and turned it into his greatest victory, you need to understand what really happened in the 3 weeks before that Sunday afternoon. This wasn't luck. This wasn't divine intervention. This was the most brilliant strategic mind of the 1960s executing a plan, so audacious, so perfectly calculated, that even his enemies would later admit they'd been outplayed by a master. Malcolm X hadn't just survived an assassination attempt, he'd orchestrated it. 3 weeks earlier, the 1st of February 1965, Malcolm received the phone call he'd been expecting for months. "You have until the 21st of February, the disguised voice said. "The Audubon Ballroom. Make peace with your God." Most men would have panicked, gone into hiding, called the police. But Malcolm X wasn't most men. He hung up the phone and immediately called Dr. Richard Anderson, a brilliant surgeon and longtime friend. "Richard, I need a favor. A big one." "Anything, Malcolm." "I need you to make me bulletproof." What Malcolm was proposing sounded impossible, but Dr. Anderson was a pioneer in experimental surgery, a man who'd performed operations that other doctors called miracles. "Malcolm, what are you talking about?" "I know this sounds crazy, but hear me out. What if we could surgically implant protective plates under my skin? Something that could stop bullets but wouldn't show through my clothes." Dr. Anderson was quiet for a long moment. "Theoretically, it is possible. Titanium plates, thin enough to be flexible, strong enough to stop small caliber rounds. But Malcolm, the surgery would be incredibly dangerous and painful." "More dangerous than getting shot by 5 assassins?" "Point taken." Over the next 2 weeks, while the Nation of Islam was planning Malcolm's murder, Malcolm was planning something even more audacious. He was planning to survive it. Dr. Anderson worked in secret, designing custom titanium plates that would protect Malcolm's vital organs: chest, back, abdomen. The plates were thin as paper, but stronger than steel. And most importantly, they were virtually undetectable under clothing. The 15th of February, 6 days before the assassination, Malcolm underwent the surgery in Dr. Anderson's private clinic. 4 hours of precise work, implanting protective armor directly beneath Malcolm's skin. When Malcolm woke up, Dr. Anderson was studying X-rays. "It worked perfectly. You are literally bulletproof now. Small caliber rounds won't penetrate." "But Malcolm, what?" "This will only work once. The impact trauma alone could kill you. And if they use high caliber weapons," Malcolm smiled. "They won't. I know exactly what weapons they're planning to use." Because Malcolm had done something even more audacious than making himself bulletproof. He'd infiltrated his own assassination plot. Captain Joseph X, Malcolm's oldest friend in the Nation of Islam, thought he was secretly warning Malcolm about the planned attack. He had no idea Malcolm was recording every conversation. "5 men," Joseph whispered during their meeting on the 17th of February. Norman Butler, with a shotgun, loaded with small-caliber buckshot. Thomas Hagen with a .32 pistol. 3 others with .38 revolvers. "They're planning to make it look spontaneous, but it is all choreographed." Malcolm nodded thoughtfully. "Where will they position themselves?" Norman in the 3rd row center, Thomas in the back left, the others scattered throughout the audience. What Joseph didn't know was that Malcolm was memorizing every detail, planning his response to each shooter's position. The 20th of February, the day before the assassination, Malcolm made his final preparations. He met with Mike Wallace, the CBS reporter who'd interviewed him dozens of times. "Mike, I need you to be at the Audubon tomorrow, with cameras." "Malcolm, what is going on?" "Something historic. Something that will change everything. But I need you to promise me something. No matter what you see, keep filming. No matter how bad it looks, don't stop the cameras." Wallace agreed, confused but trusting Malcolm's instincts. Next, Malcolm called a secret meeting with someone who would shock everyone. Agent Robert Peterson from the FBI. They met in an abandoned warehouse in Queens. Peterson thought he was meeting a desperate man looking for protection. Malcolm knew he was creating the perfect witness. "Agent Peterson, tomorrow you are going to witness something extraordinary. I want you there watching, recording everything." "Malcolm, if you know about a threat against your life, we can protect you." Malcolm laughed. "I don't need protection from them. They need protection from me." He handed Peterson a sealed envelope. "Open this tomorrow, after everything happens. It contains evidence that will destroy everyone involved in the conspiracy against me. Everyone who planned it. Everyone who sanctioned it. Everyone who stayed silent." Peterson took the envelope, still confused. "And Agent Peterson, when you see what happens tomorrow, remember this. I didn't survive by accident. I survived by design." The 21st of February, 1965, the Audubon Ballroom. Malcolm arrived early, wearing a specially designed shirt that would conceal the titanium plates while allowing maximum mobility. He'd spent weeks practicing his movements, learning how to fall convincingly while protecting his implants. The crowd gathered 400 people, just as Malcolm had expected. Hidden among them were the 5 assassins, positioned exactly where Captain Joseph had said they'd be. But also hidden in the crowd were people the killers didn't know about. Mike Wallace's camera crew, FBI agents, civil rights leaders Malcolm had personally invited, and Dr. Anderson standing by with medical equipment in case something went wrong. Malcolm had turned his assassination into the most watched political theater in American history. 3:05 p.m. Malcolm took the stage. "As-salam, alaikum, brothers and sisters," he began, looking directly at Norman Butler in the third row. That is when Butler stood up, right on schedule. "Get your hands out of my pockets," he shouted, creating the distraction they needed. Chaos erupted. The 5 assassins drew their weapons. Malcolm didn't try to run, didn't try to hide. He stood at the podium, arms spread wide, making himself the perfect target. "Do it," he said quietly. "Show them who you really are." The gunshots came in sequence, Norman's shotgun first. 5 rounds of buckshot aimed directly at Malcolm's chest. The impact knocked him backward, but the titanium plates absorbed every pellet. Thomas Hagen's pistol next, 3 shots to the torso. Again the plates held. The 3 other assassins fired their revolvers, multiple rounds, all center mass. All stopped by Malcolm's hidden armor. Malcolm played his part perfectly. He fell backward, blood spreading across his shirt from superficial wounds, where a few pellets had grazed his arms and neck. He lay motionless for almost a full minute. The assassins approached the stage to confirm their kill. That is when Malcolm opened his eyes. The look on their faces was pure terror. They just emptied their weapons into a man who was now standing up, brushing off his jacket, and smiling at them. "Gentlemen," Malcolm said, his voice amplified by the microphone that was still working. "Thank you for that demonstration. You've just proved something very important to everyone in this room." He looked out at the 400 stunned audience members. "You've proved that the Nation of Islam is willing to murder in cold blood. You've proved that they send assassins to silence anyone who tells the truth, and you've proved that they're cowards who attack unarmed speakers." Malcolm reached into his jacket. The assassins tensed, thinking he was going for a weapon. Instead, he pulled out a tape recorder. "But what you didn't prove is that you could kill Malcolm X, because Malcolm X came prepared." He pressed play. Captain Joseph's voice filled the ballroom, clearly detailing the entire assassination plot. Names, dates, weapons, positions, everything. The assassins tried to run, but FBI agents were already blocking the exits. Mike Wallace's cameras were recording everything. The evidence was overwhelming and undeniable. Malcolm wasn't done. Now, he said, his voice growing stronger, let me tell you what is going to happen next. He opened Agent Peterson's envelope and pulled out a thick stack of documents. These are bank records showing payments from Elijah Muhammad to known criminals. These are photographs of Nation of Islam leaders meeting with organized crime figures. These are audio recordings of federal agents discussing ways to eliminate civil rights leaders. The crowd was mesmerized. This wasn't just surviving an assassination attempt. This was a complete destruction of everyone involved in the conspiracy. But most importantly, Malcolm said, holding up a final document, this is a signed confession from someone very close to Elijah Muhammad. Someone who has been recording conversations for the FBI for months. Someone who has been documenting every illegal order, every violent plan, every corrupt deal. He looked directly at the captured assassins. Your boss didn't just order my death. He has been working with the federal government to eliminate black leadership across America, and now, thanks to your failed assassination attempt, the whole world will know. What happened next was swift and brutal. Within hours, every major news network was broadcasting the footage of Malcolm's survival. And his explosive revelations, the audio recordings, were played on radio stations nationwide. The documents were published in newspapers across the country. Norman Butler, Thomas Hagen, and the 3 other assassins were arrested on live television. All 5 confessed within 24 hours, providing even more evidence against their handlers. Elijah Muhammad tried to deny everything, but the evidence was overwhelming. The Nation of Islam lost 80% of its membership within weeks. Muhammad himself was indicted on multiple federal charges. The FBI agents involved in the conspiracy found themselves under congressional investigation. Several resigned in disgrace. Others faced criminal charges. And Malcolm X became the most powerful voice in American civil rights, not in spite of the assassination attempt, but because of it. The footage of Malcolm surviving the attack and exposing the conspiracy became one of the most watched political moments in television history. His speech that day was quoted worldwide. His courage under fire inspired a generation of activists. Dr. Anderson's titanium plate technology was eventually adopted by law enforcement and military personnel worldwide. Malcolm X had literally pioneered bulletproof body armor. But perhaps most importantly, Malcolm had proven something that changed the civil rights movement forever. He'd proven that with intelligence, preparation, and courage, even the most dangerous threats could be turned into victories. The men who tried to kill him spent the rest of their lives in prison. The organization that ordered his death collapsed. The government agents who enabled the conspiracy were exposed and disgraced. Malcolm X walked away without a scratch, with more influence than ever, and with the evidence needed to protect every civil rights leader in America. 3 weeks of planning, 4 hours of surgery, 20 minutes of the most dangerous political theater in history. And when the smoke cleared, Malcolm X was still standing, still speaking, still fighting, still winning. My turn, he'd said after taking bullets that should have killed him. And for the rest of his life, it was his turn. His turn to speak truth, his turn to lead, his turn to change the world. The assassins thought they'd silenced Malcolm X. Instead, they'd made him bulletproof. Literally and figuratively, that is the power of a man who is not just brave enough to face his enemies, but smart enough to turn their weapons into his tools. Malcolm X, the man who made assassination attempts into victory speeches.